All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun, back to talk more movies. And once again, we are doing a Rob's Never Seen. And I really wanted to pick something that, like, doing Valhalla Rising was just like me wanting to pick something that I'd been meaning to see that was more recent. And because I just met Mads Mikkelsen, it was like in my head to like watch that movie anyway. But this time I wanted it to be something that's also far from the spectrum of the Humphrey Bogart movies I had done previously. Because it's surprising that as many movies as I've seen, there's other movies that I've either just completely dismissed. Like whenever I look for one of these, and by the way, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, as always, like and subscribe and all that other stuff, bells and things or whatever. So anyway, we're already off the rails. So I wanted to pick something that I had meant to see because, like I said, I skip over. There's movies that when I was looking for this movie that just went, yes, that's the one. There's just so many movies that I haven't seen that I just won't see. I'm just like, nope, never. I did this, and they're not. A lot of them just aren't worth talking about for a Rob's Never Seen. I want them to have some kind of impact, whether culturally or nostalgia wise, or if it has a cult following, or if there's something behind it, the story that's greater than the movie itself to discuss, or something like that. But there's just a shitload of movies that aren't worth anybody's time. So it's hard to find one that really grabs me. But when I hit this one, I was like, yeah, because this one's bad. Like to me, this one's really bad. I would have been like 8 or 9 when this came out in 1984. But it's one of those movies that you kept saying I'm gonna get around to it, and then just somehow you never did. And I thought the couple of clips I saw of it, because I can't say that I haven't seen any of this movie. That would be so impossible for a cinephile type person. That you know what I mean? So I've been culturally aware of this movie for freaking as long as it's been out. But at the time, also, like, seeing movies like this wasn't easy all the time. Movies, and if you didn't see it on at the movies and you didn't get to see it on VHS, you're basically gone. And then you put it out of your mind, you put it off like one of these days, and then it just never comes. And here we are. And like I said, I've seen a couple of clips, but it's nothing substantial, really. And in fact, when I look at the clips that are famous, I'm like, there's so much more like unique about this movie than just those moments. And in fact, like, I'm surprised that, like, in my head, I guess I had like 16 Candles kind of built up as like just your average, I don't know, like John Hughes, like just another John Hughes movie. This is right before The Breakfast Club and before Ferris Bueller, and it really isn't like anything that I really expected. I just, for some reason, I thought that this was gonna be like when people talk about like like big movies about like kind of like adolescence or coming of age. This is high up there, I think, with a lot of people. But whenever it's ever brought up, it's just kind of these like couple of basic scenes, and I feel like that's it. And I really wish that I had seen it a long time ago, because it just kind of made me sad. Like, feeling like I missed out on having the memories of this movie because I just put it off and put it off and put it off. And that in and of itself just always makes me feel like, if you want to, if you're gonna do something that you really want to do it, if you really want to do it, whatever it is, you know, healthy, if it's healthy, like, it, you know what I'm saying? Do it, man, because regret is one of the worst things, man. So anyway, on that happy note, 16 freaking candles, the John Hughes movie that I didn't see. I'm sure that there's like probably one or two more that I haven't seen, but I've seen the majority of his films. But for some reason, this one just escaped me. And for the amount of times it's on like TNT back, like I remember this was just always playing on TNT or USA. They would just get passed around like any of those other movies that had like that kind of epic, like Breakfast Club too. Never really saw anybody like doing St. Elmo's Fire though on a loop. I've never seen that either. But I'm really glad that I picked this. I'm really glad that I am finally seeing it because as much as I said it made me sad that I don't have the memories, I loved going back to that microcosm, seeing something from that time that's good that I haven't seen. It's like a little treasure. And God, I realize how corny that sounds. But like just finding something, it's like it's almost like how I felt when I finally saw Fright Night. When I saw Fright Night, man, I was bouncing off the fucking walls with joy how much I was so happy I finally saw that movie. This is more like, yeah, this is, like worth that, like kind of, it encapsulates a lot, good and bad. But it really, like, I even talking about this though, I was kind of nervous, and even now I'm a little nervous talking about this because, I mean, this is one of those movies where if it gets discussed, like how well does this hold up? Can you make this movie nowadays? And it's like, sure, there's been tons of movies like this made, but like there are some definite lines that, to me, I don't know how the story goes for the making of this movie, but when they use certain words, like, man, they go for both words that are no goes anywhere. There's more words than two, but like the ones known, like the slang known in that back in that time, man, that was still used and is now basically like, nope, we don't talk like that anymore. And I know some people out there have got like, it's free speech, and I don't mean it like that or whatnot, but sometimes you got to hear it in a movie. And even if you can still go, like, I'll still be able to say, as I've heard, there was like 4 or 5 instances of somebody saying those terms that I understood the context in most of them. Or I'm like, I know that they're trying to say it like when people make the excuse of why we said it, I could see that it was written and performed that way with that meaning. Basically, because anybody that, like, just about your average anybody talked like that back then, and it was not something that like I look back on and go, gee, like I had a pretty decent vocabulary anyway, but like, monkey see, monkey do, and you're saying the same shit that everybody else is saying on the playground. And I'll say this: when people say that like we didn't mean it like that, there should come with an addendum to that, because being little shits that teenagers and young and junior high and junior high, man, wow, like when you start discovering words without knowing their meaning and you just toss them around like they're nothing, like that's when you hear some real crazy shit. And the addendum is that when we say we didn't mean it that way, the addendum is we didn't mean it that way most of the time. because there were some times when you were in the heat of the moment and your friend would say something and you that inflection meant he had enough time to think of words and he said it because there was still that kind of like you knew if you said it, the stigma around homosexuality would really hit you. And it was that callousness of like, we may not care if people are gay, but we know that that's a push button thing with everybody, especially men's masculinity. That if you hit somebody with that one, you're gonna like it doesn't always not come from that space where it's still like this ignorant, hateful side of it. And so hearing those terms in this movie, it was like, yes, we realize that how they're saying most of the time, but there were a couple of times where it was like, no, that was egregious, and it just feels like it's so. That's, but it's also like complaining about dialogue in a Tarantino movie then, because this is how people talked. I mean, but I'll also say this for a movie with this rating, with this kind of content, that I was really surprised, man, that they went for it a couple of times in this, as far as like really a kind of adult slipping into like, the teenage, stuff to more adult stuff. Um, that this movie really, had some edge to it. Um, it was also like I want to mention the Amazon DVD rips again because I watched this on Prime. It's like this comes with your Prime subscription. But when you press play and you see the DVD warning, and that looks great. And then you see the HD Universal logo, ba 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 ba, and it looks awesome. And then the next logo you see is like a terrible like frame, like barely HD rip. It is literally just whatever the DVD rip of 16 Candles looks like, and that's pathetic to me. That the that they can't even bother to like have a cleaned up version. And this happened a long time ago. I'm getting sidetracked here for a second, but it happened a long time ago and really like blew up. I remember a live stream where we were watching The Abyss, man, and I was just so pissed off at the transfer. It's just like, come on, Amazon. Don't give us this crap where you're just throwing out some DVD, man. I can probably find somebody who has 16 Candles and watch a better version of it. Anyway. Also, being a smaller scope movie, when I was talking about this at the beginning, I kind of felt like it had this more epic feeling to me. But I like that it is just this one day. I forgot, like, when I think about the title of this movie, when I think about what this movie's about, for some reason, I kept thinking it was going to be this movie's going to take days and days and days and days, or maybe it was going to be a lead up to the birthday, and then so all this other stuff goes on, and then what happens, and then all the birthday, her day shenanigans goes on as normal. But no, it's all in this one day, and it's a really jam packed day for 93 minutes long. It really felt like a real tight. Like again, my attention span's not the greatest anymore, but like they really put a lot of shit in this movie for 93 minutes. And it is iconic. I think, but it's iconic for more than like just this Molly Ringwald vehicle where at the end she sits next to her, the guy she wanted, the dream, right? With the guy she wanted at the end of it, having a kiss over a cake. I mean, holy shit. You want to, people like male power fantasies, females get power fantasies too. This is definitely like, but not like that though. This is more actually like a coming of age story for kind of everybody in the movie, and that it just kind of plays out that way, that she and him end up together. But he's an interesting character. Like I want to know more about like what was going on inside that character's head, because I feel like there's a lot of room for interpretation for Jake's whole reason for doing everything that he does in this movie, but it's kind of like subtle. It's kind of like what if I feel like it's a little bit like what Cameron's going through in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'm gonna take a drink here. Just pause the stream, numbnuts. Nah. As far as it being an 80, like representing 80s family and kid stuff, holy crap, man. Like, I might have been a Jehovah's Witness, but some things just translate everywhere. And I have to say, like, unfortunately, I really saw a lot of myself in the younger brother, the brother who was just a shit and just the smart ass. When they were like, don't be a smart ass, and I said it as he said it. Well, then fine, I'll be a dumbass. We both said it at the same fucking time, and I was just like, oh shit, I'm that kid. I'm that smarmy little fuck that thought he was so fucking clever, and he was, but he also knew it, and it's like it fucking made everybody nuts because you were a little shit. Oh my god. Like when you can kind of have that epiphany, when you can look in on yourself, when you see yourself represented, and you go, oh man, because you think you're so cool, man. You do. And that kid thought he was so cool. I don't, when you're that age, how do you not he's just being him. He could have just been playing himself. You know what I'm saying? But it was really accurate. The family dynamic. When the son talks to the dad about like, oh yeah, well, she's on her period, and he goes, where'd you learn that? And he goes, school. And he thinks for a second. He goes, good. Glad I'm seeing him getting my money's worth. And I'm like thinking, see, this is where parents nowadays want to blame the school for all the we learned our shit just where like the parents just were glad we knew. They were hoping as long as you didn't learn it from like, I don't know, like some fucking pedo. Because even back then, that was, always a problem. Anything that could happen to a kid. Trust me, parents talked about it, and sometimes they'd go extreme if they thought you really needed to hear things like how bad things could really be if you met the wrong person on the wrong day. But anyway, this movie, I'd be remiss if I didn't do like what I always do, which is bring up the cast. I mean, it's an iconic cast. Molly Ringwald as Samantha Baker, Anthony Michael Hall as the geek or Ted, John Cusack as Bryce, Haviland Morris as Carolyn Mulford, Beth Ringwald as Patty, Joan Cusack is Geek Girl number 1. Jamie Gertz is Robin. Justin Henry is Mike Baker. There he is. That face. I think he and I have a similar, like, I don't know, looking face there. Debbie Pollock is Marlene. Getty Watanabe as Long Duck Dong. Gong. Paul freaking Dooley is Jim Baker. Blanche Baker is Ginny Baker. Darren Harris is Cliff. Leanne Curtis is Randy. Billy Bird as Dorothy Baker. I'm doing it, folks. I'm doing it because everybody deserves to get mentioned. Carlin Glynn as Brenda Baker. Paula Elser as the shower double. The body double for, I believe, Haviland Morris, who plays Carolyn Mulford. Yeah, she's the body double. For a second I was like, holy shit. Elaine Wilkes as Tracy. John Capellos as Capellos, maybe, as Rudy Ridgechick. Zelda freaking Rubenstein, we'll get to her later, as the organist. Max Showalter as Grandpa Fred. Tony Longo as Rock. Jonathan Chapin as Jimmy Montrose. Cinnamon Idols as Sarah Baker. Edward Andrews as Howard Baker. Skip ahead if you don't like this anymore. Ross Berkson Ray, Sun Geek number 1. Carol Cook as Grandma Helen. Steve Monarch as Jack. Frank Howard as Freshman. Powerful Pexter, doesn't have any list. Marge Kotliski as Irene. Becca Eaton as the female DJ. Casey Adams and Brian goddamn Doyle Murray as the Reverend. Ba-dum-bum. Oh, and Michael Schofling as the quintessential, I don't know. He's the it boy in the movie as Jake Ryan, who again, I there's some going on in that kid's head, and I don't know. I'd like to know some more about that guy's backstory, because he kind of comes out of nowhere. Talk about like kind of blank slates. But so the whole premise of 16 Candles, right, is a girl wakes up on her 16th birthday, and it also happens to be like the day before her sister's getting married, and the entire family forgets her birthday. And this informs the rest of her day, as there's also a dance going on, a guy that she's got a crush on that we find out, and it almost feels like she finds out too at the same time, but like all these things are going on while she's trying to have, she's still PO'd about this day, but really it's her and these others kind of navigating their way in this little moment of time. And what that kind of looked like, and honestly, as far as the look, again, the look of this, yep, that's how it was, man. And it felt like, I mean, I wasn't that much further behind these kids. I was like, when you said I was like 8 or 9, so I was like third grade, fourth grade, somewhere like right around that area. So I was still like I was never innocent, but like I was still in that kind of stage, but I wasn't too far behind these kids when this came out. But it all felt and looked the same. Like these kids just felt like, I don't know, like weathered already, like streets. Like we were from the streets back then. All of us were from the streets. We were out in the streets doing shit. So everybody just felt like, I don't know. There's a walk to it. There's a presence to an 80s kid that I can't even begin to tell you. There's like this kind of confidence of like knowing I might get off the bus and get killed today, but I might also find a frog and be the best day of my life or something. You're like, it's hard to put in your head, but when you see it, you feel it, and you're like, you can be transported back there to when we were just, I don't know, I don't want to say built of stronger stuff, because it's just different. Nothing's better. Like it's just different. Like we're better. We were as good as we were at some things. We were also really bad at other things that future generations were going to get better on. Although, like, everyone also has like any kind of thing, like they're not perfect either. So nobody's, we almost went down another rabbit hole there. But everybody forgets her birthday. And the first things that I was thinking is like, what's really also going on? There's that pressure that she's feeling, or you can kind of feel like, I had sisters, man, so I didn't have brothers. So I understand that the pressure that girls have to catch up with other girls. Just like guys want to catch up with guys, whatever they think is wrong. Like some guys, just a lot of it has to do with height with guys. That's the big one. Getting tall first, gets like just knowing that somehow somewhere all of a sudden it just gets unlocked and you pop up to that, like just around 6 feet, or just above, like just around and above 6 feet. Like when you hit that magic and you just all of a sudden you come back from school, like, and somebody shot up a foot and you're like, fuck, and you're still that same height, but and then it never happens. And yeah, I'm talking about anybody that's gone through that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, but everybody changed. Like some people got taller, but they really didn't, like some people didn't hit puberty until blah blah blah, and like some people get it early, and just things happen differently for everybody. But that pressure, you can feel it in this. That's totally what everybody goes through every generation. It's universal. um Before I get too deep in this, though, and we're already deep, when we were talking about the words that you can and can't use, it made me think about, and we were talking about uh, whether or not movies like this can get made today. Like I said, you can, this kind of movie can get made. It just would it would be changing all of its language, and that's why it's like when people do remakes of these kind of movies, it's like, why? Don't do a remake, man. Make something that's like a spiritual successor where everybody goes, oh yeah, it's kind of like 16 Candles, but not. Get where they can at least throw in some kind of couple of things that make it different, man. Make it Shakespeare, 16 Candles or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, do something different with it, because otherwise, just. But I don't know. I leave it to the audience out there to tell me like what you think about whether or not this movie is like, even like, is this a canceled? Would this Is this movie kind of canceled, or is this one of those movies where you just kind of like, people go, well, it was just the time, it's when it came out. Because there's the scene with the girl in the shower, where I was just like, whoa, they're showing it. And I know they're showing it to show that the girls are looking on like, she's perfect and we're not. We haven't come, our bodies haven't moved in. And I was like, holy shit, though, but they showed it, and they showed her in all her glory. And you know that the person they're looking at is like a senior, which is one of the ways that they can try to get away with it. And then the other way is having a body double, but it still felt like wrong. And I don't know, again, like, I guess it's like context and everything. Like, what's the difference between this and Porky's, right? And like, is it just saying more like, is that the repressive side of me? Or is that just, the person inside that's like trying to be aware of problematic things, where that's what woke actually means, right? Is being aware of problems in society and then going, maybe I won't do that. not not what they say it is. Um, Deciding on what to do about that once you're informed. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Is this movie canceled? Is this movie too much for people? Like, I would hate to like turn like, if there was a way to just remove some of that, but then it's like censorship, and it's like fuck, 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 and you can't have it both ways. So is it one of those movies where you just go, well, you either just don't watch it anymore, or because I mean, using those terms, man, really can fuck with people, and it's just not. I don't know. So let's get back to the movie proper, though. Now that I've like, my record scratched and then jumped back into something else. But that's the way my channel goes. So if you're here for that, woo, you're getting it. But the '80s montage too, like showing the Chuck Taylors. I saw somebody today with Chuck Taylors, and there's a lot of people with Chuck Taylors anyway. Okay, not saying they went anywhere, but I'm just glad that it's one of those things that I got into. That like, you just a Chuck person who wears Chuck Taylors, man. It just, I don't know. My Chuck Taylor thing goes all it started with Marty McFly. Okay, that's my thing. Everybody's got their reasons. But I loved seeing the Chuck Taylors, but just the whole vibe of it all, and the music by Ira Newborn, who's done like all of John Hughes's music, and it's great here too. Everything about this is everything that I like. When you say the '80s, this movie has to be brought up. But it's like, but it's got those skeletons. Like, a lot of those movies have those moments where you're just like, oh shit. And even the '90s, man, is problematic too. It's just, shit, and again, anybody who listens to this and is like, oh, you're just being a wussy and an apologist or something. It's like, no, it's just that as much as I still enjoy those things, I'm aware that, like, again, and I don't usually talk about this, but it's, I mean, in this way, and I don't want to talk about the rest of the movie in that kind of fashion. Like, there's this pall, over the whole proceedings here, but I just really wanted to bring it up that if you're one of those people who has problems with this movie, I get it. I get it because it's like when you hear something and you're like, let's say you're in line at a Starbucks waiting for something, and somebody's on their phones and they say something like out of nowhere. It's just like completely inappropriate in just about any setting. But when you hear it and you're all caught in public, you're like trapped in a line or whatever, and you're just like fucking freeze when somebody says something just like really just, you know what I mean? Anyway, turning the car back onto the road. When she swears though, when they forget her birthday, they forgot my fuck. That's a pro. I mean, I like that this movie isn't riddled with swearing. Like later on, and it just feels like they swear a lot. I think in the Breakfast Club, but like I think after a while, movies use swearing as a crutch a little bit in certain. It was just like fuck, fucking, fuck, fucking, fucking. Like we just like we're allowed to say it this much, so let's just say it this much. And I like that it it uses swearing when it's necessary, even though there was probably a lot more loose swearing in real life. You know, like there was a lot more loose swearing happening in real life. But I appreciate that the movie didn't rely on that as a crutch to tell the story. I think that swearing just has become much more part of our just ordinary language, ordinary everyday language, where it's lost a lot of its meaning, but it's still about context. Um, so when she gets to school and she's in the classroom and they're going over this note that she has, I guess I don't know if she's the only one who has it. I can't. I think her friend gave it to her. I don't know if I ever caught her giving it to her, but it's this really sensitive question about who would you do it with, and she's have you done it, blah blah blah, and she gets to who would she do it with, and she picks Jake Ryan, who she's already been eyeing and who eyes her back, but she can't handle it, right? And she tries to drop the note on her friend's desk, presumably who gave it to her, but it falls on the floor and Jake Ryan picks it up. Now, this is where it all starts with me and Jake Ryan. Is do we ever find out? Does he ever tell anybody that he read the thing? He knew she dropped it. He read it. And the first person he talks to, he just begins this kind of narrative of what ifs. I don't think and he talks about how she looks at him, but I don't think he ever brings up the note. Now, you could say that he's just trying to like not embarrass her. He's just using what he read as like this starting point, this like detective mode, and he's never forced to actually use it as like, look, I have this piece of paper that proves it. And it's because he's the kind of guy who doesn't have to worry about getting laid, so he doesn't have to use it. But it was just an interesting choice for like for what he does with that information and how he wields it. So yeah, he picks it up and he's automatically talking about it, and everybody just basically telling him. I loved how the guy's like, she's a child, and I was just like, holy shit. Oh, because yeah, again, a little bit taboo-y. I mean, he's a senior, she's a sophomore, but I mean, lots of things go down in high school. Um, oh yeah, the slang that's in this. I miss 80s slang. I miss anytime somebody uses something like when she says major. Major, that's just major, man. Oh, I fucking love it. I love it. And shit twice and die. I would shit twice and die. I love it so much. Um but yeah, um the bus full of nerds, hilarious. Um Okay, so we talked about the nudity body double. If every, I don't know, was everybody, is that something fine either too? Like, again, I felt weird. Like, is it just like I know that like this is an adult they're showing me, but it's still like a high school girl. And again, what's the difference between this and Porky's, and why is it okay if like what age do I watch? Like, well, because I'm like the same age as the guys in American Pie or something. You know, is it fine to be gawking at Shannon Elizabeth even though nobody, like, I don't know. It's, have I reached that point where I'm just where I'm gonna be questioning every single thing I watch every single second, or will I ever just, should I have just not brought it up? Okay, but we get to see a very early performance from Joan Cusack, who's amazing. Joan Cusack is one of our like acting treasures as far as character actors go. Who's been in every kind of movie you could think of, every kind of part of it, animation. She's great at all of it. And in this, she's wearing like the like a neck brace kind of deal. Something's happened to her, and her whole thing is as Molly's, what's her character's name here? She has Sam. Um, Gets, meets with Anthony Michael Hall's Ted character for the first time, and how she's just listening, and she's just like making tiny little noises, and she's just listening to this conversation going on. And this is where, yeah, she calls him, and I again, this kind of word was said very casually to get you to shut up. Um, but it really came out of nowhere for me, and it's one of those things where he like bounces back from it, but it's like, I'm glad that they don't show like in real life how that like shatters you. The grandparents, when you first meet the grandparents, and it's like, holy shit, again, talk about just opening a door to the past, and what that always looked like when grandma and grandpa like would come over late at night or whatever, and then go to sleep while you're asleep, and you would see them in the morning, and it would be like this. And I grew up with grandparents and great grandparents surrounding me at all times, so I got really used to it. But like at first, it was like this, where they'd come over, and all of a sudden it'd be like this big deal, and they'd be awkward. I don't know. They'd be super excited to see you, and you'd be totally awkward. It just totally tracks, but it just every bit of like them doing like the ironing and stuff. I mean, and also the fact that one of them's played by yeah, Billy Bird, who's just, she's one of those actors. I mean, she lived a long time. She got a great career, and she got to play like, I think she was on Police Academy too, as like kind of a tough little bird, and she's great in this too. But that is what it looks like. And then you got like the grandfather, that's the card, the one who's always joking and has like, but like, I don't know, there's something about him that's just like, where's all the, he's kind of like the Joker. Where it's like you feel like there's like a bit of insanity to that, that card, that grandfather, kind of grandfather, Sammy Baker Davis Jr. Like that kind of thing. And then you got the whole like, I mean, I remember this iconic moment. Really, it's unfortunate that this is where they're talking about how she got her boobies and get out the magnifying glass, and then they feel her up, and it's like, holy shit. I'm glad that didn't happen to guys, when it's like, where they start grabbing guys. Oh, look, your balls dropped, and they, all of a sudden they're grabbing you like the doctor at a physical. And this is where we're introduced to Long Duck Dong, who is played by the great Getty Watanabe, who back in those days was everywhere. He's like the McLovin, who got some also extra acting jobs, and he's been working forever. But this is an iconic role of like guest appearances, like when people say, "Oh yeah, that's the movie with this guy who's named Long Duck." When your name is Long Duck Dong, people don't even really care what your acting name is. You're just that guy. And in this, he was even more extreme than I expected. I didn't realize he was like the big aggressor, like from the beginning. Is like once he gets out and he finds, like the girl, he's just all about it. Once he's like drinking and shit, he just becomes who he is. He loses all in his inhibitions, and when he comes back, he's just more or less like, "Yep, I did all that." Sorry, taking another drink. Um, but every time like the gongs going off, um, the little musical cues whenever he's around are mentioned at times. It's really weird, but I'm here for it because I like all those weird little touches that a John Hughes movie has, where it's it rides the line between, you know sometimes like a serious coming of age movie or a lighthearted, comedy with a bit of an edge, and there's just he mixes a lot of different things together, and they always seem to work for the most part. And I really miss that about those kind of movies. And then they play I Know This Much Is True, and that's when you feel old. I love that freaking movie. I yeah, I remember when I reviewed the show called I Know This Much Is True. Man, that's one of those songs, man. It aged me, but there was some I mean, the 90s were my era for music, but boy oh boy, man, cuz I grew up listening to the 80s too, but I was young, like I was in my, like again, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like I grew up with the 80s, but when the 90s came, that's when I was a teenager and it hit different. But um bands like Tears for Fears, man, and Duran Duran and shit. Um the Confident Nerd. Anthony Michael Hall is a confident nerd in this. Way different than his next movie with John Hughes, The Breakfast Club, where he'd almost say that he's the same guy. In fact, I don't, I wish he was, or maybe he is. I don't know. They can't. No, those guys can't exist in the same universe. I don't know, but they're close to being the same person. Just a certain set of events, you could say. Maybe this is what happens in Breakfast Club is just maybe I don't know. Who cares? But Anthony Michael Hall, what a man in those couple of movies back then. I hate to say it like that, but like he really had some like amazing charm, and then I don't know what happened. I just I've never really enjoyed his work much since. Now, to be fair, I've never seen him on the Dead Zone, but that's because they had already given up. But I see him in these movies, and I'm like, where did that kid go? Where did that? And by kid, I mean just he had good acting chops, man. He had good acting chops. Did he just get a raw deal? What happened? Did he party too much? I'm actually asking. But the confident nerd, he's like a unicorn. He doesn't really exist. But in these movies, they need a character that can also be the friend character, because in real life, I mean, there has to be a guy like him, more than one, two, okay? But the majority of them are not this confident. And he is something for nerds to aspire to, which is you want something, just go for it, no matter what. And I mean, they call him the nerd and everything, but really, it's just what makes him a nerd. Like he's just a kid. They don't really identify. I mean, they talk about some nerdy stuff and everything, but like you look at John Cusack here, he's like they just call you a nerd because we were all nerds, really. That's the thing. There was like kind of a baseline, like there'd be the people that kind of float in and out of all kinds of worlds. I kind of feel like that's where I lived a little bit, but it also depended on who knew you and how they knew you. To one person, you could be one thing, to another person, you could be another thing. It's so fucked up. and I know it's still like that. But uh, he comes up with they have a really great moment though. They because he's supposed to get a girl's underpants, and we'll get to that. But I also want to bring up how quickly when Jake comes up to Ted, and Ted immediately goes into apology mode, scared, like tail between his legs, completely like acknowledging the alpha in the room. Like it just made me sad because that's how quickly you get whittled down. Like that's how far you can be whittled down. Is like somebody that is higher up on like the school structure than you that can like actually ruin your life or hurt you. That's how that goes. Is you immediately go into whatever it is I did. I'm so sorry it was an accident. Please don't kill me. And they do that a lot in those movies, and people laugh, but it's like laughing at it's like it's funny because it's true, and we all laugh because most of us have been in that situation, and I think it just helps us. It's cope. It's copious amounts of cope. Um, but yeah, basically apologizing just for existing, but that's what happens. So we do get the iconic scene where Anthony Michael Hall goes into the car that's sitting there in like the shop class, and they have this really great moment. And again, this is where like these two were great. Are like in these movies, these guys were great. I can't say to everything in their careers, right? But like there was such magic in the performances, man. And I use words like magic now, but like um they just hit right. They still hit right. And the way that you sit and be awkward. She lets him in the car, by the way, She could tell him to get the fuck out, but she's sitting there and she just needs someone, anyone, to talk to about her day. So she's even willing to like put up with this guy who then suddenly flips it on her and has things to say. You know? And and this is another thing that like he kind of talks about it, how he gets taken advantage of, but like he immediately like starts to help her get with Jake. Like he becomes like the go-between for them then. Like there's that whole like ha ha ha, yeah, I guess you don't like me, so I'll just like that would he would be still devastated inside, but still be feel like okay, this is what I do to like keep myself from being embarrassed is by helping her out. But like that's a rough blow, man, to like try to push through in like one scene emotionally. Um but he's a big man in that scene, it's a movie, right? But she gives him her underpants. It's supposed to be for 10 minutes, becomes much longer. She never gets him back. And that's, if you haven't seen this movie, like, yeah, like I should have said, like, it said spoilers at the beginning. But she gets the opportunity, right? After him and Jake and Ted talk about Sam, like, does she, what is she like and blah, blah, blah. He goes up to her and she flakes. And I was like, dude, I have been in that where I'm like standing there face to face with the girl. Something is going to be said by someone. Both people are looking at each other with like some sort of anticipation. And then I flake. And then I go away and I don't talk again for like a million years. So I understand that moment. There's a scene that I'm glad was in here, I guess. It's the in-laws meeting the other in-laws. And this is where I found out okay, I never knew that the term bohunk was basically an immigrant from Central Southeast Europe, rough, unrefined, uncivilized, basically someone to look down on and shit. I used that term, but I didn't know it was like that. And man, that's why you got to be careful, man. That's why you got to be careful sometimes. Because I don't think I use it like. Look, when I say I use it, it should be also said that I say a lot of words. Bohunk is probably, it would have to be pop up in my head like the Rolodex that it is, and it would just have to, the right particular moment would have to spin and land on that perfectly for me to say it. But it was a word that I used, and I never knew that it meant that. So the more you know. Diddle 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 diddle. Um, the Wong Duck Dong car gag. This movie doesn't have a lot of gags that need a second to pay off, but like when he crashes and you don't really see the full extent of the crash, he just gets out and he's with this girl and they are just so into each other and everything that when they pan away and then you see the damage that the car like ran up on another car's hood, like completely totaling both cars. And but there's two people in the back seat of the car that was hit that are still going at it, and that's the gag. And I was like, that is another like great long like the kind of gag that you have to sit and wait for a second. This movie has all kinds of ways to tell jokes. I just was very impressed with that. The grandparents on the phone with Jake is hilarious. The nightmare that is the reality of grandparents answering the phone in the middle of the night. It is a true thing. If you have a phone, like when landlines were more of a thing, there always was a chance that if your friend had the house, like you just never know. All I know is you never know. And when they would answer the phone, it was like, you know, Charlie on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, man. The wild card. But holy shit, they trash Jake's house. The fucking weights go through the floor, through the wine cellar. It's crazy. And that's where I was like, this guy's like Cameron. Like, what is he going through? Because through the whole thing, he's like questioning. Like, I guess it's because he's moving on too in high school, from high school to other things. And this girl's got that he's with is like just party, party, party. And he's kind of thinking more serious and he's moving on probably like to college. So, like, the thing is, like, he's looking at Sam like this better thing, but like, she's temporary too, you know? Like, really, he's going off to college, probably. Not even probably, right? White bread cracker boy is going to fucking college. And it's, you know, they might, if there was like a sequel to this, they might have written him in like, you know, going to like the University of Illinois or something like that. But, you know, that's not what happened. There was only one movie. But, you know, like, realistically, what, you know, what kind of future do they really have? And that's not the fucking point. But that's not the fucking point. But it just made me like think about the thoughts that were going on in his head because his place is trashed. His life is kind of ruined, or is it? Again, rich boy cracker family. I don't. You know, I'm sorry for using cracker so much. I just love saying cracker, though it's hilarious. Um, so really, he's a really interesting, quiet guy who's like, you know, there's things going on in his head, and he keeps so much of it to himself. Even when he's like talking to Carolyn later, he's still kind of like, I don't know, almost like he gets out of the conversation. Maybe he's an evil genius. I don't know. But I thought it was nice that Paul Dooley, her dad, is the first one to tell her that he's sorry and that they all just got so caught up. But he is still alive, by the way, everyone. He is 96 years old, Mr. Paul Dooley. As of February 22nd, 2024, he is 96 years old. He was born in 1928. Holy crap. And I think his wife is still alive too. And this guy, I mean, he's been in so freaking much. He is one of, I mean, okay, if he's still around and it's from 19, he's 96 years old. He is one of the greatest living character actors of all time. If you lived in 96 years old, if you were 20 and it was only 3 years after World War II. Holy crap. Mr. Paul Dooley. We all talked about Betty White and everything, but Paul Dooley, everyone. I know he will never see this, but like he's just everywhere. You look at his IMDb page and he is still working, still doing stuff. Like maybe not as much, of course, as he used to be, but like that's awesome. But I really wanted to mention that he's like how sorry he really was, and when he talks about crushes, and it's like if they were easy, we'd call them something else. So there's all these like little moments um, throughout this movie that just has all. Oh my gosh! Let me look at this. Yeah, that have like just so many. Holy shit! I am really looking at his damn like. He was on Millennium. He was only in one episode though, but that's typical for a TV show. I'm trying to find the one that everybody knows. I'm probably looking for. I don't see him though. I don't think he was. How is he not on the X-Files, man? I don't know. How the hell did Paul Dooley not make it onto the X-Files? If somebody else knows that, to let me know if I'm wrong about that. Ted and Jake having a moment in the kitchen. But this, okay, it has a great line from Anthony Michael Hall where he's talking about girls and he goes, games, Jake. Silly, torturous games. Do you know how many times a week I go without lunch because some bitch borrows my lunch money? Any halfway decent girl can rob me blind. I'm too torqued up to say no. As much as I thought that was like a really hilarious and true kind of statement for guys like him and me, I know where he's speaking, but at the same time, he's like Jake saying that he's got Carolyn in some room that he could violate 10 ways from Sunday, and he doesn't know why he doesn't do it. And even Anthony Michael Hall's like, "What are you doing here for?" And it's like basically they're discussing whether to violate her or not in the condition she's in. So again, I had to be like, what? But in hindsight, he gives him a Rolls Royce to drive. Like this guy is like he's ready to blow up his life. Think about this. Think about like how I think he's sober and he's saying, okay, you drunk kid, take my even drunker girlfriend in my dad's Rolls Royce without a license. Like he's basically potentially ruining everyone's lives here. And I'm thinking about it like a parent, but not like a parent, but more like I follow the rules. But he's like, she's totally gone, have fun. And this is where we get the like, I guess, iconic moment of, oh, sexy girlfriend. Long duck dongs up in a tree. And I never knew where that was from until now. And now you do too, if you didn't know. And if you don't know what that means, look it up. Because I'm not telling you. I refuse. You don't deserve it. I liked even that John Cusack, the little bit part that he had with the other character in this, the other two nerds that were following around Anthony Michael Hall had a little bit of a. They didn't like have an arc per se, but more like, oh damn it, I like lost everything. A little moment where when you think they're gonna get their asses beat, and the big guys kind of actually like they put him in the trunk, sure, but it was gently. And I think that somewhere along the way, those two nerds had a good time with those three really big guys. Maybe they put together the cans again that they knocked over and they had a good old time. Because I feel like there was some kind of mutual respect going on there that I appreciated. We get a fourth wall break from Anthony Michael Hall as he is with a drunk girl saying this is going to get good. Again, I was going, please don't do what I think you're going to do. Please don't. Ever notice he's kind of like Mo, and the other two are like Larry and Curly, just kind of there, and he's always just like telling them, hey, you guys, quiet, you take those things off. But he didn't even get to pick, which is kind of funny that he, even after all that, he'll have only the emotional memories, or will he? Will he have more than emotional memories? Who knows? Um, Long Duck Dong gets kicked in the shit for a little while, called a scuzzbag. That's where I realized that I think she was in police academy. But everybody kind of has like a weird ending. Like Caroline doesn't do it with Ted, but they kind of go off the belief that they did. And so they start making out and she's kind of enjoying it. And I'm just like, what? I mean, like, I guess she's, I don't know. I don't know. This movie's weird at the end where everybody just kind of starts like getting what they want. And maybe that's just the way. Wait a minute. Happy endings. Okay. There are like happy endings. Um, okay. So Zelda Rubinstein at the wedding. She's playing the organ and she starts going, "Here comes the bride, all fat and wide." And I was laughing my ass off because that's what and then I realized it's Zelda Rubinstein who plays Ginny Weeden on the picket fences. And yes, she was the lady who said, in Poltergeist. All right. I know. But I remember her from all the episodes of Picket Fences. Um, Brian Doyle Murray, briefly as the Reverend. I don't think he even has a line. The sister being completely doped out of her mind was a weird, like, all of a sudden, like, weird choice of, like, her being on a muscle relaxer and barely able to get through her wedding. Like, there's so many weird parts to this movie that it's just like, why is she on it? Yeah, I guess that, she realizes, like, that she's probably shouldn't go through with this marriage, but they let the marriage go on anyway. There's like more to the story, man, that we don't even see that you can just make up in fan fiction, man. Like, see, that's the kind of fan fiction that I want to see turned into a movie. It's like, what happened to her sister and this guy? Why doesn't anybody do that? No, instead we get like fucking goddamn like 50 Shades of Grey and shit. But at the end of the movie, when Jake realizes he can pawn off Caroline onto Ted cleanly now, he goes and finds Samantha, and they finally connect. And when Paul Dooley's character of her father sees him, and takes and he totally checks out his car, checks out the way the guy is, way he looks, and that like he's thinking like what he said to her the night before about how I'm not really worried about you, and when it happens, it'll be like, the love of a lifetime kind of thing and everything. But that's the romantic side. The dad side of him was looking like, yep, see, I told you she'd be able to take care of herself. And this guy actually looks like he's got something to bring to the table, unlike my other daughter. I don't care. That's what that look also said to me. But in the end, they do get to have their moment, the big iconic image of them over the cake, and he's like, make a wish. It's already come true. And they kiss. And that's the end of the movie. And it's like, it just ends simply. Everything kind of works out for everybody in this kind of like weird, again, this weird kind of universe that like represents it and doesn't represent it at the same time. There is a bit of an ideal here still. Okay. There is, of course, separation of like making believe certain things that wouldn't happen, and here I am bringing them up, and I have to like stifle that instinct. But none of those things ever stopped me from enjoying this movie. Not as much as I don't love it as much as people probably who have seen it and have that memory from like 40 years ago, because holy shit, it's 40 years ago. I just realized that. 94, 4, 4, fucking A. 40 years ago, this movie came out. Eat a dick, universe. Anyway, that was another Rob's Never Seen. This was great. Again, so yeah. I'm all of a sudden I don't know how to end it, so I'm just gonna end it. So totally tubular, dude. It was great doing another one of these Rob's Never Seens, and look out for some more of them in the near future. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, all the blah 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 blah. Peace out, Girl Scout. Right now, I've got to shit twice and die. Bye bye.